So it's no surprise that I've spent a lot of time at the doctor's office since July. In fact, my cough is getting worse. Can you believe that? I can't either. It's super frustrating. That's not what we're going to talk about in this particular episode. I'm sure it's going to come up because I need to reference some things. No, we're going to talk about something else the doctor does when he checks your reflex. What happens? You kick your leg or you move your elbow or whatever, right? It's a reflex. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode, episode 255, the Liberal Reflex. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. Stay tuned. All right, like I said in the intro, we're going to be talking a little bit about reflexes. Now, it's not quite what you think it's going to be when we get to the actual end of this story. No. I'm using this as an analogy, okay? And I want you to think about it. Now, like I said in the intro, I have spent way more time in the doctor's offices these last few months than I have ever wanted to or ever do want to again the rest of my life. I don't want to deal with it. It's been super frustrating, but it is what it is, right? You need to take care of yourself, especially when you start getting seasoned like myself. You can see I've got gray hair going on. What do you guys think about this goatee, by the way? Do you like it? My wife and daughters absolutely hate it, and that is kind of why it's still on my face. Just in spite. I don't know. Does that make me a dick? Maybe. I don't know. I digress, as always. By the way, something else I'm going to do you guys like this jacket? It's starting to get cold here in Idaho, and Zero Foxtrot wasn't really a sale, but this is one of those whoopee hoodie things. This is not, I paid for this myself. I am definitely not endorsed by Zero Foxtrot, though I think they have some cool stuff. Anyways, I couldn't resist this whoopee hoodie. It's fluffy. Oh, is it warm? And I'm starting to get cold. It's, like I said, it's starting to, the temperature's changing here in Idaho, so I gotta stay comfortable, especially in my condition with my health, right? That's how I justify spending the money on a whoopee hoodie. My wife thinks it's stupid, but she also thinks this is stupid. So what do you do? What do you do? Anyway, while I was visiting the doctor recently, he pulls out his little bag. Now, this is actually a surprise, right? I didn't think doctors carried these little black bags anymore. No. This doctor did. And he's decided he wanted to check my reflexes, right? So he opens this little bag and he gets out his little hammer. And first he checked my knee, right? He pulls your leg out a little bit and just relax, and he taps it. And what happens, right? Your leg flinches. It's a reflex. It's something that you can't control. And then he did the same thing with my elbow. He says, just stretch your arm out, relax, and he hit it, and right, my arm flinches. You just can't control it. It's a reflex. Now, a lot of times in our lives, we do things as a reflex. Right? When we're startled, we do the startle reflex, or some people punch, right? When they get scared, they'll swing as a reflex. And sometimes our nature, or how we've grown up, our environment, I guess I should say, creates those reflexes in a certain way. We react in ways that our mind is used to reacting. Now, what does this have to do with anything? Well, today, your President Biden, who I think he's still the president. I mean, he sure doesn't act like it. They hide him from all of us. And when he does give speeches, they're small and short and kind of off the rails, much like I speak, I suppose. But today he signed a executive order on firearms. Now, that's what I wanted to talk about. And this is the reflex that the anti-gun community has all the time, right? Whenever there's any kind of tragedy, anything they can create into a tragedy, or I shouldn't say that, make more of a tragedy, maybe that's a better way to phrase it. They're encouraged to do something. You've heard President Biden say that many times. We must do something. Well, today, they felt like they needed to do something. And this is what the executive order is, okay? We're going to go through some video of this. Now, I know this is probably not going to be the funnest video that you're going to listen to. You might want to grab some duct tape to wrap around that noggin of yours to keep your head from exploding. Maybe if you're the drinking type, actually you probably shouldn't drink during this video. You're going to turn into a major alcoholic. But maybe a little bit of Robitussin, just a little bit, just to kind of take the edge off, so you can handle both speeches from the occupier in chief, Joe Biden, and I guess you call her the vice president. I know that's what she is, but the nominee for the future president. We'll see. Hopefully that doesn't happen. That would be a major mess. It would be intriguing, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be fun? No, it wouldn't be fun. Anyway, let's jump to this video. So I got to switch some things around. My mouse goes to sleep on my computer, so sometimes I have to hurry and redo it, and that kind of annoying. I probably should have scaled this to the size that we need. This will work close enough. Anyway, check this out. So I cut this original whole signing ceremony was almost an hour long. I chopped it up. We're down around 24 minutes of raw video. I'm sure by the time I edit down what I want you guys to really see and listen to, does that make me a propagandist? What things I felt were most important for you to hear? I'm sure we'll be less than 24 minutes. But anyway, let's get cruising on here.
I believe the right to be safe is a civil right.
It's not, by the way. You guys hear that okay? Make sure you guys can hear this all the way.
And that the people of America have a right, then, to live, work, worship, and learn without fear of violence, including gun violence. And yet, our nation is experiencing an epidemic of gun violence. Yeah. I'm telling a bunch of leaders who know. Today, 1 in 5 Americans has a family member that was killed by gun violence.
Where do those family members live?
Gun violence is now the number one cause of the death of children in America. Not car accidents,
you hear that?
not cancer, gun violence. The number one cause of death for the children of America.
It's not. We've talked about this a lot,
this is
right?
the result of many.
It is not the number one cause of death among children in the United States.
Mass shootings and school shootings that are too frequently occurring in our nation. And it is, of course, the result of everyday gun violence, which occurs in cities and neighborhoods and towns across our nation. And we
now let me. I shouldn't have to pause this, and I wanted to just kind of talk over and with her like through this speech, but I just have to pull this up. Before she speaks, they had the mayor of Baltimore. Baltimore is one of the deadliest cities in the United States, okay? Now, the mayor of Baltimore lost his brother to gun violence. Why isn't the mayor doing something to clean up the violence in his city? Now, just like she mentioned, mass shootings happen far too frequently in the United States. I agree. They happen too much. Okay? But what policies are you guys implementing? What laws are you enforcing? Now, there are over 20,000 gun laws in the United States, whether that be federal or by state. Over 20,000 laws already on the books. Why aren't they enforcing those 20,000 gun laws instead of adding more restrictions to people that are actually obeying the law? The things that are proposed in this executive order are only infringing on the rights of the law-abiding. People that break the law, they don't care about these laws, right? The thing is they are letting people out same-day bail, no bail, right? So they'll just catch and release criminals coming across the border. It happens. That's not a racist statement. It is happening. Of course, gun violence is going to increase when you increase the amount of violent people in society. And instead of curtailing the people committing the violence, they're implementing more restrictions on your civil rights. Now, here's another thing that's probably going to piss some people off, but this is the truth. Every gun law that comes out, especially this executive order, unfairly impacts minorities. Now you got these folks in inner cities that want to defend themselves because the cops don't show up. They have to take matters in their own hands. But these law-abiding people in these in these inner cities who are minorities who want to defend themselves are unfairly restricted by gun laws. Okay? Again, instead of enforcing the laws that take place, taking the criminals off the streets, they're letting them run rampant to create fear and chaos so they can create more laws. Okay? Let's keep going.
Know that the prevalence of this violence causes trauma that is far too often undiagnosed and untreated. Yes. Which means that the effect of it is from that moment and lingers for a lifetime.
And what you need to understand with her comments about trauma, which is
seriously
true whenever people have serious events, threatens to their life, or say see violence, they have trauma. That's true.
That result from this violence.
But what they are creating is this narrative of a public health epidemic.
To try and comfort them after their child was killed by gun violence. And let us all agree, it does not have to be this way. We know we have in our possession, we know how to stop these tragedies. And it is a false choice to suggest you are either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I am in favor of the Second Amendment, and I believe we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban.
A well-regulated militia, necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Universal background checks, safe storage laws, and red flag laws. When we took office, we promised to take on the crisis of gun violence, and we passed, under the president's leadership, the first major gun safety law in nearly 30 years, a bipartisan law, which includes an historic investment to address the trauma caused by gun violence. We are hiring 14,000 new mental health counselors in public schools across our nation. We need to hire more. We need to hire more.
Instead of making schools an undesirable place to have an attack,
in student mental
they're making more
health
feel-good people. They're adding to the bureaucracy.
For as much as we have accomplished, more must be done. We need more leaders. We need more leaders like the leaders in this room, in Congress, who have the courage to take action, to stand up to the gun lobby, and to put the lives of our children first. Last week,
now listen to me.
Last week I met
Freedom
with a young leader.
is
Her
greater
name is
than
Natalie.
comfort.
She is a 15-year-old student at Appalachia High School and a survivor of gun violence. When we met, Natalie was still wearing bandages, and she is extraordinarily brave. And so on behalf of her, on behalf of all the survivors that we have lost, let us continue to fight to end the epidemic of gun violence and to keep our communities and our children
They're creating this narrative.
And now,
because once they turn this to a health epidemic, then it's easier to enforce laws. They did this with cigarettes.
To introduce a leader
and cigarettes are not constitutionally protected, right?
Of this crisis. He is a mayor.
Now listen.
Who knows firsthand
they
what
are
it is
generating
like to lose a loved one to gun violence.
So now she's going to be, this is when they bring the Baltimore mayor, right? Baltimore, like I said, is one of the deadliest cities in the United States. It's one of the deadliest cities in the world, by the way. They don't want to talk about that. By the way, all these gun laws that they want to pass, they already exist in Baltimore. So it's not doing much to curb the violence. But what I was saying about cigarettes. So years ago, when I was a kid, you could buy cigarettes in a vending machine. There was cigarette ads all over the place. Cigarettes are not a protected right, by the way. I don't care if you smoke. I think it's gross. I don't care if you smoke. It's not good for your health. But because they had such an issue with cigarettes causing a real health problem, they started cracking down on advertisements and cigarette companies and all this stuff. Now they're trying to use these same strategies on firearms and firearms dealers, firearms manufacturers, and people like you and me that own guns. They're creating this majorly negative narrative about firearms. Now, if they can make the firearm this scary, dangerous, deadly tool, which it is, but it's also used to save lives, but they don't want to talk about that. But if they can create this scary narrative and teach it to the children of the future, or the leaders of the future, our kids and grandkids, they don't want to deal with it because all they see is guns are scary, guns are bad, guns are a public health epidemic, right? It creates this negative connotation, which then, I don't want to say breeds it out of the next generation, but it does take away the importance of firearms out of the next generation and so on. So the Democrats are in this for the long game. They create a public health epidemic out of gun violence. Then the CDC gets involved. Then you probably saw, I don't know if you remember the Surgeon General talking about how guns are an epidemic. They create this lie, or they share this lie that firearms, guns, are the number one killer of children in America. We've talked about this before. I've shared with you the statistics. That is a lie. Now, when you think children, you think 0 to 17. That's a lie. Firearms are not the number one killer of children. Now, if you go from teens to 26, yes, firearms are the number one killer. But there's a caveat in that. They don't talk about inner city gang violence in there. Now, this is not a black problem, okay? Don't ever think that this is a black person problem. No, it is an inner city issue. It is an issue where fathers are taken out of the home. There is no role model. These kids go to turn to these brotherhoods of the gangs. That's where the problem is as far as the inner cities are concerned, in my opinion. Okay? But they turn this into a health epidemic, and that creates the negative narrative for future generations to not want to support the Second Amendment. Now let's think about this. In the founding documents, in I think it's in the preamble, I can't remember for sure, so I probably should be careful how I talk about this. The founders wrote that it is the duty of the citizens when the government becomes tyrannical. It is the duty, and it says that word specifically, and I've read this on the show before. It is the duty of the citizens to overturn a tyrannical government. How do we do that? We have to have firearms to be able to put pressure on the government. That is why the Second Amendment exists. Not hunting, not sport, not to shoot holes in paper. It is to be the last check and balance of a tyrannical government. We have separation of powers. That's there for a reason. But when you have tyranny and you have power-hungry people on both sides of the aisle manipulating our rights in all three houses of government, three branches of government, that creates tyranny. I believe, and even with these executive orders, that is a form of tyranny. Now, this is not a call to violence. I'm not suggesting that we all grab our torches and pitchforks and AR-15s and march on the Capitol. That is definitely not what I am saying. But what I'm saying is the Second Amendment exists for the people to keep the government at bay from becoming a tyrannical government. You don't like that? I don't care. Look, search the founding documents. Prove me wrong. Look through the founding documents and see where I'm wrong when it says that it's the duty of the people to overrun or overthrow a tyrannical government. It's in there. Don't take my word for it. Let's carry on.
And to see his community shaken by tragedy. A dear friend who is not...
You've turned your pain into purpose.
I cut out the governor, that governor's speech, or the mayor of Baltimore. It wasn't really pertinent to what we're talking about. It was just a lot of grandstanding and whining, basically. Shouldn't say whining. He lost his brother to gun violence. It's a tragedy. But it's the same stuff we hear all the time. The president here, Biden, jumps in after the mayor of Baltimore. They talk about the hurricane. So as of we're recording, it's September 26th. There's a hurricane that's hitting the Gulf Coast right now. So spent a fair amount of time talking about the hurricane, and then so I cut all that out so we didn't have to listen to it. Anyway, this is where he jumps in. Do you need duct tape? Do you need a minute for a drink? Let's keep going anyways.
That's what it's all about, turning your pain into purpose, your loss into determination, your anger into commitment, and the power of a movement of saving lives. That's okay. Babies rule.
Wait a minute. Remember when I talked about the reaction that we have? Instead of using the proper channels, here we are just having an emotional reaction to do something out of emotion, not out of logic, not out of the boundaries that the founders set forth.
Don't worry about it. This past Monday, the FBI released data showing how crime is down in America.
It's not down in America. 40% of precincts aren't reporting the data to the FBI. So it's artificial. But I digress. I think we've talked about that before, too.
The year before we came to the presidency, we saw the biggest increase in murder rates on record. Last year, we saw the largest decrease in murder rates nationwide.
Because it's not reported.
Thanks to guys like you wearing those uniforms. The homicide rate in 2023 was 16% below the year before we became president.
Because it's not being reported.
In the first half of 2024, in large cities across the country, homicide rate dropped another 17%. Last year, we also saw the lowest rates of all violent crime in more than 50 years.
Because it's not being
Murder,
reported.
Rape, aggravated assault, robbery, all dropped along with burglary, property crime. It matters. And together we're making clear, if you want to talk about reducing crime and violence in America, you need to talk about guns in America. You just heard Kamala cite the statistics all Americans should be ashamed of. Guns are the number one, hard to believe, are the number one killer of children.
Not according to the
America.
CDC.
More than any other cause. Accidents, more than any other cause. It's almost unbelievable to think it's sick. Last year, after another school shooting, my predecessor said, like some members of Congress say, quote, just get over it.
He didn't say that. He didn't say
I'm
that.
going to be very blunt.
I believe we talked about that.
Secretary Vance of Ohio has called these shootings facts of life. Who the hell do these people think they are? I mean it.
An emotional reflex to do something, right? Create the narrative, have an emotional reflex.
Only industry that is exempted by law from being investigated and being dealt with is the gun industry. Imagine had that be the case with the tobacco industry. What cancer would be like. I mean it sincerely. Think about it.
Probably because cigarettes
This time
are
last
not
year, we stood in
constitutionally
the Rose Garden
protected.
to launch the
And by the
first
way,
ever White House
that
Office of Gun
is
Violence.
a generated farce as well. The firearms industry is not free from lawsuits. Now, if they created a product that caused harm out of defect, they could be held liable. But if somebody uses a gun in a crime, it's not the manufacturer's fault for the misuse of the firearm. Much like we don't sue Ford for somebody's drunk driving behavior. Okay? That is a lie generated. The gun industry is not free from litigation unless their firearms or their products are being misused. Then we hold the people responsible, right? Just like, well, he says that the firearms industry is the only one that you can't sue. What about malpractice, medical malpractice? What about what about pharmaceutical companies? Huh? You don't hear any lawsuits against those folks. Weird, huh? Weird.
Prevention. look around the room and I see survivors, like our former magnificent congresswoman, who's always out there fighting. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Abby. You know, it's staffed by gun violence survivors and experts overseen by our incredible vice president. The purpose is to drive and coordinate the government in a nationwide effort to reduce gun violence in America. Over the past year, we made tremendous progress. More background checks required for firearms sold at gun shows online. New interagency response teams to support communities after mass shootings. And I've been to all...
Background checks happen no matter what, unless it's a private sale by federal law. So he's manipulating the numbers again in this speech by just saying, hey, you know what? Because online gun sales, you know, we've done background checks. Those already happened. Pretty cowardly.
All but 3 mass shootings in the United States of America, and spent time with surviving families, many of whom I see here in this audience, because it's important to raise up what's happening. Most comprehensive federal guide ever on safe gun storage and firearms. First ever Surgeon General's advisory declaring gun violence to be a public health crisis.
See that? Dangerous. It's dangerous, folks.
By the way, parenthetically, as I travel the world with other world leaders, they ask, do you really have do you say you have a public health crisis with gun violence? Well, today I'm proud to announce a new executive order. That's going to do 2 additional things. First, the executive order will establish a new federal task force on emerging firearm threats. Previously, my administration took action to crack down on private manufacturers of firearms.
It's not illegal to make your own guns.
This is probably the only audience knows what ghost guns are. They don't have to have a serial number. Guns don't have serial numbers. It's hard for them to track back to the shooter and hold them accountable when something happens. But today we're taking the next step. Our new task force will address 3D printed firearms. And for those listening,
you're not illegal.
In this room knows what that is. But they actually can produce a plastic firearm with a 3D printer. That, magnetometers can't detect these.
That punk pulled a Glock 7 on me. You know what that is? It's a porcelain gun made in Germany. Doesn't show up on your airport x-ray machines here, and it costs more than you make in a month.
Or they don't have a serial number. This task force is also going to tackle machine gun conversion devices mentioned by the mayor. Devices that illegally turn semi-automatic weapons, including handguns, into fully automatic machine guns. They can fire up to 20 bullets in 2 seconds.
He doesn't even know what he's saying.
These devices are already illegal under federal law and can be made on a 3D printer for just 40 cents in less than 30 minutes.
FBI, open up!
And sold for as little as $20. But local law enforcement in cities across the country tell me,
by the way,
flooded with me.
they're trying to crack down on the Glock switch, right? Those are not 3D printed out of plastic in somebody's basement. Those are coming from countries like China or other places, and then being just handed out basically on the streets. Okay, now look, we've all seen like the fuel filters on like Temu. They post on Facebook or whatever once in a while. The same idea with the Glock switch. These thugs are somehow either, like I say, they're just coming off the boat somehow. They're not being 3D printed in people's basements. I don't think that there is a Glock switch file for just a standard plastic type printer. It wouldn't last. You might be able to get 1 or 2 mags, maybe, but it's not going to last. It's going to just explode because of the amount of there's reciprocating mass and slide and all sorts of. I don't think it would last. People are not printing those in their basements.
Machine gun conversion devices. Isn't that right, Captain? Because the parts are small, cheap, and easy to make. The impact of these devices is devastating. Just this weekend, a machine gun conversion device was found at the scene of a mass shooting in Birmingham. I can tell you, over 100 shell casings. 100 shell casings are found, including 4 killed and 18 injured.
2 boxes of ammo.
The community shattered. enough. Within 90 days of our task
I'm gonna have to look into
force
that Baltimore shooting.
will send me a
I
risk
bet-
assessment and a strategy.
I
to
bet it
address
was
these
something a little
emerging
different
firearms
than what
threats.
they're selling.
It's about sending a clear message. Don't worry about the babe. It's okay. Really. Sending a clear message to local law enforcement, the cities across the country. We're to help, and together we can save lives. Look, the second part of this executive order relates to active shooter drills in schools. You know, it's a good thing, but people don't, you all understand, many of you in here, but the psychological impact that has on a child. You know, I'm old enough, we used to have drills for, duck and cover for nuclear devices. But guess what? Now we're talking about kids know what's happening. Yeah. Kamala just talked about the worry of parents and the stress and fear of students have when they're told to participate in active shooter drills. The lack of guidance today on how to prepare students while minimizing the trauma of active shooter drills is unacceptable. So today I'm directing the members of my cabinet to return to me within 110 days with resources and information for schools to improve active shooter drills, minimize its harm, create age-appropriate content, and communicate with parents before and after these drills happen so they know what's going on.
There's ways to harden schools without arming teachers and without dealing with its other stuff. There's ways.
We just have to do better, and we can do better. But that's not all. Today, my administration is also announcing a whole series of new actions to address gun violence. We're releasing a new tool with resources to help schools communicate with parents about safety of storing firearms in their homes. And by the way,
How do the schools know that there's firearms in the home? Interesting
I,
question,
along
huh?
with Diane Fines, the guy that passed the first assault weapons ban. And here's the deal. It was amazing. Amazing how many of those gun violence occurred with those when they were outlawed with these firearms were a consequence of a parent not being responsible with the guns they own. Or in a recent case, I won't get into it because it's under litigation, a parent who provided an assault weapon.
It's not against the law to buy your child a gun.
It's been found that when school
I shouldn't say
administrators
like
communicate
little child.
with parents about safe
not
storage
against
of
the law.
firearms in their homes, it motivates parents to act. We're awarding $135 million on
Where's
top
this
of
money
the
coming from?
$238 million we've already awarded last year to 48 states for crisis intervention. Including tools like red flag laws. I'm going to say, be very personal here. My son was Attorney General of the first state in the nation to institute that statewide. Temporarily removing firearms from those who are a danger to themselves and others.
Yes, right.
Well, it's important.
Violation of the Fourth Amendment.
We're awarding an additional $85 million to 30 community violence intervention programs on top of the $200 million we've already invested in these programs. As you all know, these local intervention programs stop shooting before they happen, utilizing trusted messengers, community members, leaders to work directly with people at risk or the most vulnerable to gun violence. And folks, all these new actions build on the historic steps we've already taken since I took office to address gun violence in America. Through the American Rescue Plan, which, by the way, not a single one of the opposition voted for. I don't say that for political, I say that to make sure people understand it's not costless to do that. To help deliver more than $15 billion, the largest investment ever in public safety. Let me say it again. All our opponents voted against the largest funding ever in public safety.
Probably
I
because
also
it was full
announced
of
a
pork.
dozen executive orders to reduce gun violence more than any of my predecessors. And with your help, we passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun violence control in the world. And so many things because we had a first-rate prosecutor who had What an incredible experience dealing with these things. Among many things is strengthened background checks for anyone under the age of 21 seeking to purchase a firearm. Since we implemented the background check system last year, we've kept almost 1,000 guns out of the hands of people under the age of 21. But folks, the law also
It's not illegal to be
invests
under the
over
age of
$1
21 and have
billion,
possession of a
the
firearm.
largest one-time ever investment ever in seeking to deal with mental health issues in our schools. Help them deal with the grief and trauma of gun violence and other traumatic experiences. We spent a lot of time, didn't we, with those kids? Afraid to go back to school. Not an unusual thing to be concerned about if you sat there and the kid sitting next to you at your desk gets shot and killed. My former Senate Deputy Chief of Staff is here with me today, Roger Harrison, sitting in the back there. He founded an organization that does outreach programs for middle and high school students dealing with mental health issues. And many others around the country doing similar things. We still have more to do. But the steps we've taken so far in reducing gun violence and saving lives are real. But we have to keep going. There's so much more we have to do. I think it's time to reinstate the assault weapons ban and high-capacity magazines.
By the way, that did nothing to curtail gun crime during its tenure from 94 to 2004.
When I was a senator, and I introduced the first effort to ban it.
I ain't Charlie Brown, I couldn't see the view anymore. Was he mumbo?
Right. What did he say?
Said, how's his head, huh? He only took him down because he couldn't see the view no more. What's he mumbo?
Of those weapons. I literally was walking through the swamps of in southern Delaware, down in the area where the swamps and ridges are. There's a guy fishing. And he looked at me and said, Biden, what the hell are you going to take my gun for? What, you take my assault weapon?
I doubt this happened.
And I said, true story. And
It says true story, didn't happen.
You need that? He said, yeah. I said, you must be one hell of a lousy shot. And I don't see a lot of deer running around here wearing Kevlar vests.
Same tropes.
Well,
I
that's
swear
not-
he's told the
why do you
stupid
have
story
it?
so many times.
Well, I hunt. You hunt like hell. Look, it's time we establish universal background checks.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. God have mercy on your soul.
That story had nothing to do with universal background check.
And require safe storage of firearms. I mean it. Start holding parents accountable for being negligent. By the way, if you pulled up here wherever you parked and you left your key in your car, and a student steals the car and gets in an accident, you are held responsible. Why in the hell would not be the case if you left a gun case open?
That was because cars are not protected under the Second Amendment.
And I've been fighting for this. I'm going to continue after I leave this office. End immunity for the gun industry. End it, end it, end it.
Doesn't exist. The purpose for ending the immunity for gun manufacturers is to put them out of business, to take guns out of the equation.
I taught constitutional law for years. Constitutional law.
No, you didn't.
Never was the Second Amendment meant to be absolute. Back when it was passed, you could not own a cannon.
You sure about that?
Yes, you can.
No, I'm not joking. People
I can
like
buy a cannon right now. No background check, by the way.
The liberty of Americans is water with the blood of patriots. Like hell. I'm serious. Think about it.
Got that quote
Think
wrong.
about it.
It's
It
the
was
same
never
story.
absolute.
And he screwed up the
Never,
last time he
never,
said that
never.
story, too. It's not
It's
a story.
time we
That
increase
quote.
funding for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Another law enforcement agency to deal with crime and solve crimes faster. We get a lot of heat from the other guy. She got a lot of heat from the other guy talking about we're not helping. We're the ones funding cops.
No, you're the ones that defunded the police.
It's time to increase funding to help victims of crime and support community groups helping and hurting people hurting from gun violence.
What?
I really mean it. Unfortunately, my predecessor and a lot of congressional other people opposed all these steps to reduce gun violence. Instead, they tried to stop the crackdown on ghost gun kits, by the way.
Because it is not illegal to manufacture your own freaking
Second
gun.
Amendment right. Give me a break. If they got their way, criminals could traffic guns and commit crimes. Congressional opponents are trying to defund the Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
Because it's a worthless bureaucracy.
Defund the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Bless me, Father, as we say in my church. They attack the FBI and want to abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. By the way, that's written out.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for fighting gun
Because they're running a tyrannical
Folks, you can't be pro-law enforcement.
regime in there. The bureaucracy is awful.
FBI and ATF. It's outrageous.
They're attacking your civil rights. And they're using these bureaus to do it. Thank you for the Supreme Court for
that's why we're here today.
attacking Chevron deference.
Why this is so important. We need your help in fighting and standing up to the gun lobby, gun manufacturers, the politicians who oppose common sense gun legislation. Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent, we all want our families to be safe. We drop families off at the house of worship or a child at a mall or a movie theater or a school. We don't have to worry about whether that's the last time we'll see them. I mean, think about it. Think about it. We all want our kids to have the freedom to learn how to read and write in schools instead of duck and cover. Let me close with this. I know how difficult this work is, particularly if someone's been through the tragedies and consequences of it. But I also have no illusions about the champions and heroes in this fight, including all of you. I really don't. Look what you've already done. Look at the movie you built. Look at the elected officials standing alongside me and here today. Listen to the young people speaking out. That's the power of your loved ones and their memory. And that's the power of this movement. It's the power of America. We just have to keep going and have faith in who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, we're the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I mean that. I swear to God, I know I look like I'm only 40, but I'm 100 years old. Been around a long time. I really mean it. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation in the world, as a student of history, I can tell you, that's come out of every crisis stronger than when we went in. And we got to come out stronger now. Now I'm going to sign this executive order. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Senile old guy gets to write his name on this tyrannical piece of paper. Now, executive orders are just orders. That's it.
What I'm about to sign is combating emerging firearms threats and improving school-based active shooter drills. Never thought I'd have to sign something like this, but we do.
Again, this is not a bill. It's an executive order.
Bravo.
Oh, he just handed his pen to I think she's a Senator Macbeth. Her son actually was killed in an act of violence. Sad, right? It's sad. But this sure seems like theatrics.
Thank you.
Distinguished guests, please remain in your seats for the President and Vice President departments.
Oh boy, Joe Biden. We love that guy, right? What a stellar old man. So there he is, old man Joe, signing the executive order to combat gun violence, right? we can pull up the paper. Maybe I will. Let's see if I can get this on here on this screen, just so you guys can see it. Did I take it down? Son of a biscuit. So let's look through this real quick, okay? And why do we want to read this? I want to share you with this so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about here. Oh, geez. Oh, golly. Let me pull this up. Make this bigger. I want you guys to see everything on my screen. All right, so here is the executive order that the presiding president, the guy that occupies the Oval Office, signed. Have you noticed that he's not doing anything in the Oval Office anymore? Like they don't hold press conferences. Or back in the day, you would see the president sitting at the desk at the Oval Office making official declarations on things. Instead, they got him at this little table. This isn't the first time that they've sat him at this little table in one of the press briefing rooms. It's kind of interesting, but I digress. I'm not going to read all this stuff. You guys can read this on your own. But there is something I wanted to bring up. Let's see, make sure I get this in the right spot, because this was when I read through this whole thing along with some of the other links. There was a lot. There's a lot to deal with here. I'm going to read the whole thing. Okay, ready? Do you want me to read it in my radio voice? It's funny because if I read things in my radio voice, I tend to get through it better. So I'll do it. In this executive order, President Biden is establishing the emerging firearms. Holy shit. Maybe not. In this executive order, President Biden is establishing an emerging firearms threat task force consisting of leadership from key federal departments and agencies. President Biden is directing the task force to issue a report within 90 days that includes an assessment of the threat posed by machine gun conversion devices and unserialized 3D printed firearms, an assessment of federal agencies' operational and legal capacities to detect, intercept, and seize machine gun conversion devices and unserialized 3D printed firearms, and the interagency plan for combating these emerging threats. The report will include any additional authorities for funding the federal agencies need from Congress in order to complete this work. All right, did you hear what I just said? Okay, there was a specific phrase here. Okay, that their task, the capacities to detect, intercept, and seize machine gun conversion devices and 3D printed firearms. Seize. Now, how are they going to be able to track down these 3D printed firearms to seize them? Now, the only way they're going to be able to do that is how? Think about this for a second. Are they going to be monitoring the files that you download? Boy, isn't that an infringement on your civil rights? One of your enumerated rights for privacy? Warrantless searches? Interesting, huh? Interesting. Anyway, you can read this whole thing if you like. I'm not going to read this thing to you because it's too damn long and there's too many words, and there's a lot. Like I said, I read through this whole thing. There's a bunch of different links. I was curious on, we talked about, and I mentioned that earlier, one of the things in this executive order is to help schools get involved for safe storage of firearms in your home. What in the hell is it up to the school to make sure that your firearms are stored? And how are they going to know if you have guns in your home? Think about that one too. Are they going to be interrogating my children to find out whether or not there's guns in my home? And then if they deem me a threat, remember, they can use red flag laws, which are also part of this executive order, to take my guns away. Let's go back to the doctor analogy real quick. The doctor uses his little hammer to check my reflex. Anytime that there is a violent act where a gun is involved, the left uses an emotional reflex to do something. And here we see with his executive order that every time they have an emotional reflex, it's always about taking your rights away. For safety, of course. They use children as the emotional pawn. Let me tell you about something that, we talk about safe schools. I have a buddy named Jason. He owns a company called 3D Response. Now, his company, his sole purpose is to create a school, or to harden a school for any kind of shooting threat. Now, he has a proven system. It has been proven. And it keeps kids safe. It's funny, whenever there are logical, constitutionally protected, or solutions that protect the rights of the people instead of taking their firearms away or intruding on other civil liberties like privacy, whenever there's a solution like Jason's, no, they don't want to hear those solutions because they work and they will save children's lives. Nope, they need the tragedy to create an emotional response just like theirs. Friends, don't fall for it. Don't. Why am I still on this screen? Don't fall for it. They want you to have an emotional reflex like theirs, and they will use children as pawns until you willingly give up your rights. The key, my friends, the key is you and me and our neighbors. The key is written in the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people, are the key. Not the government, not any agencies that are allowed to arbitrarily create laws without Congress's approval. No. You and me, our neighbors, our communities. When the communities get together and hold our elected officials responsible, good things happen. I'm not talking like a January 6th event, no. When we go through the proper channels, when we stop being friends and start being parents and expect our kids to follow the rules, that helps too, by the way. Taking people's rights away is not going to solve a violence issue. It's not. We just saw in California, somebody blew up. It was like a courthouse or something. They used an IED, right? An improvised explosive device. They didn't use a gun. Wow, that's interesting. That's almost like evil will find any means necessary to follow through on a plan. It's not the gun. It's not the gun. Even though the left insists on the reflex of emotion to take away your rights. Don't let it happen. Be vigilant. You can do this. We can do this together. Anyway, that's it. That's the show. Thanks for listening. If you're looking for some patches, I don't have any near me. I'll take a picture. I'll put a picture up. Don't forget, range-minded patches are still available. If you're interested, you can send me an email and we'll get that figured out. I can't, for some damn reason, figure out a cheap way to sell them online. That's just the way it is. But I also dumb. So there's that. Remember, folks, the next generation of Second Amendment supporters depends on us. We need to take people shooting. We need to share our love for our rights for the next generation. So you need to take somebody shooting. Anyway, guys, be safe. Remember who you are and what you stand for. We'll see you next time.